The At Your End Step podcast is brought to you by ComicTown. Check them out at www.comictown.net and search for ComicTown Gaming Center on Facebook. Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hey.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you guys today. We just had a Pro Tour that happened, so we're all pretty pumped about that. And we had States over the weekend, too, which Dave and I attended. Yeah, it was a pretty good Magic weekend, in all honesty. So I'm sure you guys, went out and played a bunch of Magic. You had a tournament, a decent-sized one that you could probably go to. So we're here to kind of cover all that jazz. So let's go ahead and we'll dive into the community topics. They are Pro Tour focused at this point in time, but it's important stuff to actually take a look at. The first thing that we kind of want to talk about was a bit of controversy that happened on Friday, the first day of the Pro Tour, involving one Patrick Chapin. He received a game loss on camera due to failure to reveal a card he searched for. Impulsed for.
Yeah, he plus
from a
one.
Johnny.
He had a Johnny Manor of Heroes in play. He ticked it up. You can look at the top 4 cards, put either a creature or a planeswalker that you in there, reveal it, put it into your hand.
Or an aura.
Or an aura.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah.
I forgot that it used to pull up Chain of the Rocks every now and then, right? Wasn't that
Yeah.
the tech? So he opened it up, tuned it up hilariously. It was like 3 lands and Tasigur, so like he only had one option, and he put it directly into his hand. Did not reveal it to his opponent, and got a game loss because of this.
Yes.
What's more surprising than this is not just the game loss, because the rule there, and Dave is probably going to try and tell you otherwise, because he's a big Chapin supporter, I guess, or
I'll let you finish.
Apologist, or whatever you want to call it.
Thank you, Kanye.
But it is important to note that the coverage did not cut away from the judge's ruling, nor the appeal. Which is something that I don't think we've seen on coverage before. Star City is very, very cut and dry about how, they'll hear the ruling, and if there's appeal or whatever else, they're cutting back to the booth. And they did not do this, and it was a little awkward. We got to hear some conversation of a man who was pretty upset, and, I mean, regardless of the rule, rightfully so, who's not going to be upset in that situation? That's just how emotion works. So I'm sure he's excited to know that some of his, not his finest moments are sitting there, that we can go back and watch on YouTube right now if we want to. But there was drama all over there. If you really want to see what was fun, go take a look at Cedric Phillips' Twitter from while this is happening, and he's actually caps lock tweeting,
Oh, yeah.
"Why are you doing this? Cut away from it!" It was ridiculous. So,
See, I wouldn't say... I thought Chapin was... he was obviously upset, but I thought he was respectful the whole time. I don't think he was... he wasn't berating the judges or doing anything out of line, I felt like. I felt like he was respectful. He kind of was trying to plead his case. And it was... Obviously, it was an unfortunate situation for him. By the letter of the law, yes, when the card that he picked off of a Johnny touched the other cards in his hand, that is technically drawing the card or adding the card to his hand. But I felt personally that it could have been a situation that they could have reversed, or maybe he could have got off with a warning. Clearly he wasn't trying to cheat, and the game had not progressed to a point where they couldn't have fixed it at that point. He had 2 cards in his hand before that happened. He added the Tasigur off of the Johnny it was on the top. It was the top card. So he had three cards total. When he went to go pick them up, that's when his opponent kind of stopped and was like, "Oh, you have to reveal that card." So yes, technically he added it to his hand, and I understand the judge's ruling, but I felt like it could have been they could have reversed it, in my opinion.
I think the spirit of that rule, it's the same, and it's a little bit different ruling, but it's similar to what if you drew an extra card, right? And you put that card on top of your hand, and you're like, "Oh shoot, I drew an extra card," and it's sitting on top of your hand. You're still going to get a game loss for drawing extra cards. It's too easy to abuse if you are lenient on it, and I think and that's probably what he's suffering from is a rule that's easy to abuse. if you are lenient. So you cannot be lenient. I will say he wasn't disrespectful, but he did say some, like, we just watched it back a little bit, saying stuff like, well, I never picked up my hand, and he did pick up his hand. Like, he didn't pick it up and shuffle it around, but like flat out, like, I did pick up my hand. And that's a guy who's being rushed. I don't think he's like trying to cheat there. But then, like, saying, he also like, well, he knows all my cards. We had a courser, and his opponent, whether or not his opponent's gaming or not, is like, well, I don't. And making that kind of statement, he knows, as well as anybody else watching knows, that doesn't matter. Like, even if if your opponent had written down all the cards from a thought cease from before, you could argue that those, and you could just say, oh no, those are from something else, or those from before. Like, it's not admissible. So
Chapin tried to plead his case. Obviously, some of the points he made didn't make any sense to me. Like he said, like, a couple of different times, oh, can we go to the tape? Can we look at the tape?
Yeah,
you can't do that. You can't do that. They did that. When they first really started covering. The events. They've always done the top 8, but once they started covering like every round of the Pro Tour, and when they started covering GP's streaming, there were a couple of situations where they did go back and look at the tape, and then they consciously made the decision, okay, this gives. This is unfair to all the matches that are not on camera.
Yeah,
so
I
we're not going to do
that
this.
more. Like, that policy is absolutely correct.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Some people don't like it. I think it's completely fine. It's kind of. I guess you can kind of compare it to like baseball. Like if you're going to go back and review things, also it slows down the tournament. It's just
that doesn't worry me as much because like feature matches slow tournaments down anyways because they normally start behind the regular clock and everything else, and that's fine. When you go to a tournament that has that, that is a component of it. The difference to me, at least thematically talking about a tournament, is if I'm Joe Schmo and I'm sitting down and and like myself or any of us sitting here, whereas Star City might give us a feature match, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you top 8 at something, whatever, but like most of the time you're not. You're just sitting at your round, right? Because you don't have a name, right? You don't have a chance to get a feature match, meaning that if the guy in the feature match is getting cheated by something or can have something fixed by camera, because you're not well known enough, you don't get the chance to ever have your games featured in that same way and fixed in the same way. And it's just not fair. It would add an actual straight up advantage to being on camera as opposed to not being on camera. And I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, it just felt like I don't know. Like I personally felt that the judge could have changed the ruling because the game had not progressed past that point. Like he easily could have just said, okay, the card that I put down, it's still the top card. I can still reveal it, still show you that it's a legal card. But unfortunately for Chapin, the head judge was pretty strict on it. He didn't change his mind. And on all honesty, I thought he could have just basically laid down the law and be like, "That's my ruling. That's it. That's done." It kind of went on for a little while, but
we should have seen that. Like that's just the weird thing. We definitely shouldn't have seen that. I don't know.
Yeah. It was unfortunate because they were in extra turns when that happened.
Yeah,
and it looked Chapin had an Ugin ready to ultimate. Both players were at a pretty low life, so it basically would have been like a win or at the very least a draw for Chapin. It ended up being a loss. That was his first loss of the tournament too. I think he was 5-0. They were both 5-0 at that point, and he kind of had a downward spiral after that, which is understandable. I'm pretty sure he was tilted pretty hard after that.
He went 6-2 day one. He didn't have like a downward spiral. He just didn't have a good day two.
So he had one win after that.
I mean, still, go 6-2 day one isn't. I wouldn't call that a down. Going 1-1 after that match is not a downward spiral, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, all right. So maybe that was the wrong wording.
No, that's fair. I mean, you could argue that, but I would hate. And I don't expect him to do this because Chapin's a pretty solid competitor, but I would hate to hear Chapin come up and be like, yeah, it ruined my whole day too, because that's a cop-out.
No, I don't think he's going to say that. I think, he has his own podcast. He has his own, I'm sure we'll hear about it in the article, in Star City this week, and I'm pretty sure his stance is going to be like, I messed up. It was an unfortunate situation. These things happen. I was being rushed, whatever, what have you, but... yeah, it was just really awkward.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that we really feel for Chapin because we've all been in that kind of situation where it's like we're rushed. We want to finish this game and we make a silly mistake and it costs us the game. And I think like that was like.
Have you met Big Tears?
Like that's probably why like people even discuss it or talk about it, just because like we really feel for him in that particular situation, and like it was definitely awkward, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more when our question of the week rolls around. So we'll move on for now, but it's definitely something we are going to revisit here later in the show. A couple of other interesting things that happened were some disqualifications that happened in the Pro Tour. The first one being Jeremy Desani, player of the year, correct?
Yeah.
Jeremy Desani. So his was for misrepresenting game state to a judge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I tried to go read up on this a little bit, and it was essentially like he did one thing and then explained to two different judges like a different scenario, trying to make his argument look better both times. And it was like, oh, so like then they confer, and it's like, so what was your story again? And it's just like, oh, and this is obviously better for you if it comes out this way. Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah. It's not a good look.
No,
not
no,
a good look for
and,
the player of the year.
Not to be a gossip or anything, but I mean it's not shocking coming from Desani. I've heard some not so savory things about him.
We talked about at Worlds about him talking to vendors about what cards people were buying, and it's kind of a scummy thing.
Yeah, he sort of tanked his reputation quickly. Unfortunately, was it he or the other one who was playing against Ray Perez though? Because there was a joke about how cheaters keep benefiting Ray Perez. It was either him or the man we're going to mention next, who was actively playing against Raymond Perez when this happened.
That's hilarious. No, yeah, the best thing to come out of this was definitely Owen Turnwald tweeting, since Jeremy Desani got DQ'd, am I now the player of the year?
Retroactively.
Which gave me a chuckle when I read that.
Yeah, I think, man, on top of this, I mean, Desani just hasn't been having a very good year either.
No.
So it's like, I don't know.
Definitely not in that race for player of the year this year.
No, I don't think he'll be running it back.
Probably not.
However, cheater of the year still up for grabs.
Very true.
We still got some voting time left.
We know who last year's cheater of the year was. Well, actually, there was a couple candidates.
Yeah, like I said, this is a tough award, right?
Yeah.
Outstanding cheating in various categories. Oh man. And then we had one more, right, Morgan?
Yeah. One of the people in this podcast is quite intimate with this person as well.
Quite intimate.
Wow, that's actually worded strangely.
I played it in one match.
Doesn't matter. You beat him in one match too.
Sure, yeah, we'll say that. I made him pay for his pack.
So what's interesting is I want to talk about that for a bit. So go ahead, say the name.
Okay, so Steven Speck. We have mentioned his name multiple times.
Because he went on the most insane run, across multiple tournaments and a GP with a deck that's before the Pro Tour was a real outlier.
A real, I would imagine, a high variance deck at some point.
Yes, a high variance deck, and it was noted to have many turn one kills, many more than the average player. We're talking about Amulet Bloom, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, Elliot Mork.
Who got turn one twice.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting.
We heart you, but this is your vindication, I suppose.
He was, by the way, Elliot was not happy when I texted him about that.
Well, let's talk about the cheat here. So I guess now, from what I read, and I went try to do my homework on this. Apparently, what he's been accused of doing this before, of how his hands are always so good and not good enough to go turn one, and he double sleeves his deck every time. Now, I'm not saying this is an insinuation of cheating. I like double sleeving a deck. Once you get used to it, you sort of get used to it.
Yeah.
However, it does make it harder to see how big the deck is. But he was fairly consistently. From what I understand, and I met him. I've not met him, but I know of him. He's a larger guy, like bodies, not heavy, but he's got taller, sort of gaunt, and he has large hands. It's been implied he's very good at palming. All right, so he either palms 7 cards or places them in his sideboard, and then is able to sort of sleight of hand, oh, you've cut, okay, cool, and then it's oh, pick up my deck. The hand is now on top of the deck. That's the cheat, and that is what he was caught doing. I think it was Ray Perez who decided to pile shuffle his deck. And apparently Spec freaked out about this with good reason. And the pile shuffle showed interesting 53 cards and a weird set of cards off to the side that would have been a really, really good hand. Huh. Yeah. Interesting how that works.
That's a pretty ballsy move.
Yeah. This is definitely I don't believe Mr. Speck is going to be returning to the game.
Not for many, many moons.
Yeah.
I think
we can't say anything. Nothing's been announced, but
True.
this is a very this is a bad cheat.
Yeah, this is really rough.
This is intent. Like this is rough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Patrick Sullivan had the best. He had the best tweet of the whole day. He said, "This is some real cartoon villain crap." Clean that up a little bit.
No,
but it was good.
Something else is sort of damning for him. Okay, and of course, Wizards isn't going to take this into account, but public perception will. He's also noted as being a pretty sloppy player, and has consistently, even on camera and feature matches, not understood interactions in his own deck. The one that he's turn one killing people, like not knowing how certain pack triggers worked, or doing things like failing to pay for pacts, like the kind of game errors that a person winning a GP cannot commit. And I was reading some articles about like how he's got sort of a reputation for being sloppy and sort of luck sacking people, and it's like, well, wait a second here then, like. This paints a really bad picture. And then I remembered your story, Dave, about this guy who, like, in the finals doesn't pay for a pact.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I was saying there was a Facebook post about this, about how I had commented that, he had turned one Elliott twice, in the top 8. And then I kind of jokingly said, like, oh, well, he couldn't run the cheat on me because there were too many eyes on that match, where there were a bunch of people watching. But, I mean, that's probably true. That's probably what happened. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean... I don't know why you'd try to run that at a Pro Tour.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
It seems pretty loose, but I'm sure he'll be getting a nice email.
I imagine the DCI will be in contact with him shortly.
I mean, it's just a vacation, right? Just a little DCI vacation.
Yeah.
So, and this is frustrating because, like, you look at someone like Dasani. Dasani, what I assume, yeah, you probably will not get that kind of. Like, I doubt he gets a ban. Like, I doubt.
No,
he gets a ban.
yeah, I don't think. I wouldn't say Dzani was like a cheat, but it was more like you could take a tournament off.
Yeah,
but it's not like
exactly what
it's not like a blatant
like
cheat.
that's sort of a heat of the moment. Like, you made a bad decision, you're getting punished for that decision. But like actively trying to like cheat in a specific way, like. You're out of here, man. Like, and like you do this, and it's the same thing where it's like, we talk about like they're getting banned for a while, but it's like that guy will just never like. He had a cool like 3-month run where people like we knew his name, like we knew a deck he played, he did well. It was like, oh, cool, look, he's doing this, and it's just like, oh, it's actually this. Like, so you threw any goodwill away by trying to do this.
Yeah,
so
and even
like,
if he comes back, he's always going to have that reputation. Now.
Yeah,
we've talked about this before. It just sticks with you.
and we put the dark mark on his arm, and it just.
Yeah. Well, if that's what you're gonna do, then you're gonna have to pay the price, and the price is gonna be
The Price is Right.
Sweet banning, the ultimate price, if you will. So. I mean that's pretty much it for the community stuff. It's a pretty negative community stuff, but I mean these are important things to know about. Let's go ahead and move a little bit further into the podcast with the competitive segment. So before we talk about Pro Tour, competitive wise, Dave and I did attend standard states in Ohio, and Dave had a worse day than I did. It started off pretty rocky, and Dave, you could tell your story.
Okay, so my story begins at F&M the night before, which I'm not going to talk about the tournament so much as the deck that I played. So last week I talked about the fact that I was looking for a standard deck to play because I really didn't know.
He's perpetually in search of a standard deck.
I mean, I usually have a good idea, but
Since Sphinx's Rev has rotated out, he's just been a
Yeah,
lost
I
soul,
just-
just
yeah.
wandering across the plane.
I'm just going up to random people. Anybody have a deck? Do you have a deck for me? No? Oh, all right. So I decided to play Abzan Aggro. And I thought it was a pretty solid deck. I have played it before, and it was pretty decent for me. And I actively wanted to pick a deck that didn't run enchantments and did not play Rabble Master, just because I didn't think enchantments were positioned well with Dramica's Command running around, and Rabble Master, so much removal in the format. So I wanted to be playing the command deck, essentially. So I decided to run that at F&M. Lost in round 1, and then decided that the deck was trash. Didn't want to play it anymore. Still slogged it out through 5 more rounds at F&M, just prolonging the misery, basically. Just did horrible. I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm running this deck at States. So, flash forward to the next morning. So I decided I was going to run Jeskai tokens. I really liked Todd Anderson's list that he had posted on Star City last week. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I borrowed some cards from Mike, had most of the cards, pretty much just I was missing 2 Dragonlord Ojutais and an Arc Lightning. So I'm like, oh, okay. And I know that Morgan has Ojutais, so I was like, I'm assuming he's going to bring them, but I'll just shoot him a text just in case. So do you want to explain how that happened?
So technology is a weird thing, right? And there's this thing called iMessage, which allows 2 iPhones to basically use data to message each other, but not like a text message. Well, I didn't have my iPhone that day, so when Dave sent me a iMessage, I did not receive it. And I did not bring Dragonlord Ojutais with me. And it turns out that the vendors there had really good prices on Dragonlord Ojutai. So much so that someone decided to purchase all of the Dragonlord Ojutais that were being sold at the venue. There was one left. It was a foil Dragonlord Ojutai.
No.
It was $30.
Yeah.
Which potentially could have been a great deal now, but, who wants to bite on that bullet at that point in time?
So, so we're on the way. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll be able to pick these up, no problem. Nope. There were, 4 vendors there?
Yes.
There were 4 vendors. Everybody was sold out.
Yep.
Asked around. Nobody had any. So it's like really last minute. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I can like put 2 other cards in the sideboard and I can still play this deck. And I'm counting the deck because I thought I had the whole main deck together, and then I was just like missing 4 cards from the main deck, and I'm like, oh man, I don't even know what this is. As I'm doing that, they're putting the player meeting up.
Yeah, the tournament fired like early. It was the weirdest thing, and in all honesty, and I was in the players meeting just scrambling down my deck list. It was pretty interesting.
Oh, you were doing that? Oh yeah, because I was doing that too.
So yeah, it's great.
So I'm like, all right, I can't figure this out, and then I just like kind of, oh no, it's the only deck that I have sleeved. It's absolutely.
I've already paid.
Like I was actually miserable at F&M. I was just like, I don't even know why I'm playing the last round. I can't even prize. I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, Mike had to give me a ride, so I was just like, I got nothing else to do.
I just want to point out that I offered to give you Esper, which I did really, really well with, despite having on practice all, and crushed you with. And I said, here, you can borrow this one. And you're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Hilariously, I offered to give him that deck that had 2 Ojutais in it. So even if he had just taken the deck to consider it, 1, he would have had a different deck sleeved up. They would have enjoyed playing more than Abzan. But 2, he would have had Ojutais to play tokens. So Dave just got just crushed all weekend.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah,
We're sorry.
Needless to say, going into round 1, I had about the worst attitude that you could possibly have. I'm just like, damn, I hate my deck. I'm like, I hate my deck. This is gonna be so bad. Just gonna like scrub out. 0-2 drop, whatever. I don't know. I lost to some guy round 1 playing Green Red Dragons.
Might have been Morgan.
Yeah, it might have been me.
It might have been me.
That's what I woke up to, because I have to not to go. I went back to bed, and I woke up, and the first thing I see is like a picture of like, Morgan 2-0. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Like, I literally say, I was like, well, congrats on your round 1 bye, because I can't possibly beat your deck, because this deck can't possibly beat anything.
It's so angry.
Now, I've gotten over it a little bit. I was so salty, but
The salt was real.
I will say, Brad Nelson's list was a lot better than the one I ran. I ran main deck Thoughtseizes and Wingmate Rock, which were absolute trash. So don't play those cards in Abs and Aggro, at least main deck. But anyways, yeah, I went through predictable 1-2 drop, and then played in a modern win a box, and at least I won that. So
He did win a box.
Yeah.
No splits. No splits McGee over
no
here.
splitsies, no.
He had to share his salt with the world.
Yeah,
Man, no splits. It didn't drop a game.
yeah, it was good.
So,
Still running Delvers, obviously.
yeah.
He just want to go somewhere safe. Like, I need a safe house.
I'm like,
Delver.
I'm like, this is a good deck.
I really need to blind flip something.
I'll put a lightning bolt.
It's like a Pokemon style when like Ash is like tries other Pokemon. It's like, this is an Onyx, right? Yeah, I choose Pikachu.
Yeah.
Buddy, this is an Onyx, right? Like, no, I choose
Pikachu
Pikachu.
literally does nothing. It's a rock type, and that's an electric type. It's like
No,
you know that
I just
doesn't
love
work.
Pikachu so much. He's gonna do it.
Pikachu's
And
just
somehow
really-
he does it.
Pikachu's just really fast. It doesn't matter.
I just remember the scene from that series where Pikachu's like on the bike, like trying to. Oh man,
Pokemon. If you guys, it's on Netflix still. I think go watch it. It's great.
so unreal.
We'll wait.
How
You
did
can
we?
pause it.
How do we
You
get
just
here?
Pause us. Pokemon.
How do we get here?
I don't know.
All right.
It was interesting hearing. So I played Green Red Dragons. I had not played a game with the deck going in the tournament, but I just knew that Jeskai aggro was not where I wanted to be necessarily. The going 3-3 and top fouring, the IQ was not like the best, confidence builder. It was like false results. It's like, well, you did kind of garbage, but here's the top 4 anyway.
Here's points.
So, Van Meter's list looked really good to me, and I had most of the cards already for it, so I was like, I'll just play this. Ended up going X3 in the 8 round, so 5-3. Losing the last 2, which was really rough, so the wheels kind of fell off at the end, unfortunately. I don't think that I could have done anything different in my win in. I had some unfortunate mulligans. But I definitely could have played better the last round, the 8th round. I made a decision against my Abzan aggro opponent, which led me to lose game 2. That if I just had changed what I was actually going to do and removed his threat, it would have been a 2-for-1 for me. That's what made it so unappealing. But it's just I might as well have just killed it and then been able to win the game from there instead of just immediately losing to the removal spell he had in hand. So. So that decision just ruined game 2 for me.
So your Abs and aggro opponent went 6-2.
Yeah.
Seems like his deck's pretty sweet then.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
I mean, see, you needed to mess up for him to win, though, because that's the only way he could possibly beat you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Game 3 was rough. He had 3 Anafenzas. I also got a double. We also both got double warnings for not exiling creatures from Anafenza, which was it was so bad. Oh my gosh! It was oh, this is tournament exhaustion at its purest.
You almost had the rare double KO.
Yeah, we asked the judge about it, and he said it would have just negated. It would have just canceled each other out. We wouldn't have gone to a game 4 or anything like that.
Offsetting penalties, replay the down.
Right. Going to game 4 is sweet. I just want you to know. It is really sweet to go to game 4.
In honesty, I would have loved to go to game 4. I would have maybe won that one.
I went grocery shopping and then took a nap. And then my wife and I went out and had some, we went out on a nice little date, and I watched The Avengers. It was a fun day.
By the way, I knew there was no way you were going.
Yeah.
You probably didn't get home till, 3?
Yeah. I was a nice guy. Keller was sick, and he had driven Dave. And I was like, oh, well, I'll take you. And it was a 6-round F&M. So it was afterwards, I'm taking Dave home, and I'm just we'll see how I feel when I wake up. My alarm went off. I woke up, and I went, no.
I don't feel good.
So, but I will say this: I would have played Esper while pretty much Shaheen's list with literally one card change. And then I all night I was saying man, Foul Tongue Invocation is the truth. This card is disgusting. I want more of them, and it's all over the Pro Tour. So we'll use this as a nice little segue into our top 8 here.
Yeah,
but. Man, that card is insane.
These
decks are awesome. I finally found an Ojutai deck that feels good. It did not feel good in tokens. It felt awful in tokens. It was miserable. Playing it with actual counterspell, Silumgar Scorn, a.k.a. counterspell. I'm hoping for the next tournament I could just use my cool Ice Age counterspells because I don't understand why they wouldn't let me use my favorite version.
I don't think they'll.
It's the same card. It's actually the same card. It's just like using an older version.
So you could probably get those altered with just the art.
Oh God.
Yeah. That probably
don't tell me to spend money on altering uncommons. Yeah. That's a terrible idea, but I want to.
I think you have to do it now.
So obviously Pro Tour, pretty exciting. Won by what do we got? Atarka Red. Atarka Red is probably a good name for it.
Red Atarka's command. Mono red command.
So it's basically mono red splash green for Atarka's command, piloted by Martin Dang.
Don't forget about the Become events.
Oh, did he have a Become?
He had one Become events. It was insane.
Well then.
Yeah, he was just getting people all day with it. And the best part too is people were blocking. So let's talk about this idea of the deck construction. So if you looked at this deck, because it's a pretty straightforward red deck. The numbers are fairly interesting. But he was a deck that wanted to go wide. So he had 4 Dragon Fodder, 4 Hordeling Outburst, and then to make sure I can get to it. And he had 4 Tarkus Command. And the Become events was insane because he was trying to go around people and use a Tarkus Command to deal 6, 7, 8 damage, right? and they would block in such a fashion that like they didn't want to let enough creatures through because they're afraid of that. And like so because of this, they're like, all right, well, I'll block all these goblins. I guess this one comes through. And instead of a Tarkus commanding, you just become a man. So you're just like, oh God, what have I done? So like,
I've made a terrible mistake.
Like once you show them that, like some of the camera matches, you should have seen the decision trees coming from his opponent. Like where they are now so terrified of 2 cards, like where he's just like, which one do I play around? How do I block here, right? And to Dang's credit, he stayed calm the entire time. I thought he played every match that I saw, I mean, as well as he possibly could. He had a couple matches where like he fell behind, and that's what the red deck will do. But like there was an entire match that devolved into essentially him showing a Tarkus command so that his opponent playing Dragonlord Atarka had to so they reached this weird moment where like they both had to play into these 2 cards, and that was the whole match, and it was just awesome to watch. And like he lost that game, but it was just like he knew what he had to do with it. So he played this deck well. It could attack on a number of different angles. It was, I don't know, this is a pretty good deck. This is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I really like the build. This one kind of this is one of the decks that really stuck out to me when I first saw it. I was just like, because we've seen kind of the mono red splash Atarka's command, but he kind of went like all in with like the 4 Dragon Fodders, 4 Hordeling Outbursts. He wanted to maximize that card.
Yeah, the effectiveness of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean this is like the deck to play. This is the Atarka's command deck.
Oh yeah, I mean if you just to go on goldfishing this deck for a second, if you go turn 1 Swift Spear, attack for 1, turn 2 Dragon Fodder, so attack for 2, so that you've done 3 so far. Next turn Hordeling Outburst, trigger attack for 5, and then untap with the Tarkus command. Like your opponent's just dead on turn 4, and even if they have some number of like blockers to try and ping things off, like they have to have BioBlight, or they're dead. They're just dead.
He pretty much did that in the top 8 match in the quarterfinals against his Abzan opponent.
Oh god, and there's definitely a world where his turn 4 is 2 Atarka's command, and if that ever happens, your opponent just actually bursts into tears. Like it just has to happen.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is. So we'll kind of get into this more, but there are a lot of mono red decks in the actual Pro Tour. They didn't have the best crossover rate, but that's because they're probably just like the most represented deck there. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of ones that just don't make it. So it was close to like 60% or something like that.
Yes, 66 or something.
66% that actually day two'd. And it's interesting to see what like the blue-black controlled decks that had like one of the highest
90% turnover, like
yeah,
that's
90% crossover rate. So it's like you have this mono red deck, mono red ostensibly that should have an advantage against these blue-black decks, and then you have like the best deck in the Pro Tour being the blue-black deck. It's like you have this weird sort of like so what do you prepare for? What do you play next week?
I think this right here, we've argued before how good this format and these formats have really been, and look at how healthy this is. Go look at all the red decks that have top 8, compare them to teams, whatever. The numbers are not the same. How many Rabble Masters are you playing? Heel Cutter. How many Frenzy Goblins? How many of this? How many of this? Which number is correct? Go look at the blue-black decks. Yes, blue-black as an archetype. It should be noted. We said 90% day 2'd. There's a couple decks of 100% day 2'd, but there's only like 4 or 5 people playing them. Cormantha Flare, I'm looking at you. But like, look at those decks. Some of them are playing Ojutai. Most of them are playing some number of Ojutai. Not all of them, right?
No.
How many Fountain Invocations, right? How many discard spells? How many, like, there are so many options at the moment that you can build these decks. Like, this is this archetype. However, it's doing this instead of this, and that's really impressive.
Yeah, there's so many good cards, and I feel like the power level is it's kind of even like across the board, so there's a lot of room for innovation even within the archetypes.
For sure. I mean, compare this to Burn last season. And we all played that deck, the red Burn deck. It was 4s. It was just 4s.
Yeah, or like even mono black, mono blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Like almost the whole format. The black white mid range.
Like literally talked about how the innovation for mono blue from week to week was how many rapid hybridizations or how many Biden-Athasas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now you're looking at like 10 different red decks that have yes, they're all mono red aggro, but they all are trying different numbers and trying different things, and how do you metagame against all of those decks the same way?
Yeah, or even these we saw a bunch of different devotion decks Like you saw green white devotion, green red devotion, straight
Yeah.
green devotion, green black. You know,
See,
there's a
some with
ton of
See the
different ways.
Unwritten, some
Yeah.
with Genesis Hydra,
Yeah.
like
So let's take a look at the rest of the top 8 here. And I'll just go ahead and list out the names in the decks they were playing. So we have Andre Stratsky playing Strosky, excuse me, playing Green Red Devotion. Adrian Sullivan playing Blue Black Control. Jason Chung playing Red Green Dragons. Shota Yasuoka playing Blue Black Control. Marco Camaluzzi playing Abzan Control. Thomas Hendricks playing Green Red Devotion, and Andrew Oshwager playing Esper Dragons. So, I mean, seeing a lot of Blue Black X, 3 decks, in the top 8, really shows you how powerful, this concept was for the Pro Tour.
And they were all pretty different too.
Yeah,
there are 3 blue
you can't
black
even
decks.
say like deck list. You can just say concept. Like that's the closest
Blue
you
Black
can
the
get.
concept. I mean, heck, one of the Blue Black decks was upside down compared to the others.
Just total 180.
Oh, that was unreal. I do want to say I was really impressed. Andre Strosky, this is his second Pro Tour top 8.
And the first one was Cons, right?
Was Cons, yeah. This kid is 19 years old, and I think you kind of see him and Jacob Wilson are kind of like the future, and they're both super good. You're gonna see these guys for a long time, I think.
Yeah.
I think what's more interesting too about Strosky's is that he played on he had a couple people on his team who played one. I think the other guy actually top 8'd as well, right? But they disagreed fundamentally over See the Unwritten versus Genesis Hydra. They talked about it, and he was like, "No, I'm going to play this." And at 19, to look at his team and go, "No, I'm going to play this because I think this is best for me," and then to put the results up with it is impressive. And please keep doing well with See the Unwritten.
Yeah, I agree. Go.
Yeah, but I believe he actually had the. I believe he actually had the best standard record of all the top 8 competitors as well. He was 8-1-1 in standard. But yeah,
Brian Nelson was 9-1.
No, it was out of the top 8 people.
Oh, out of top. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
misinterpreted. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, I was really impressed. Really impressed with his play, and also Adrian Sullivan. Congrats to him. I know a lot of people don't like the way he plays his cards. I personally don't care. I think it's funny. But I mean, this is somebody who they were talking about. He was literally at Gen Con when they debuted Magic the Gathering as a game. So this guy is the oldest of old school. Been playing since the beginning.
And honestly, his writing is like I said. I was telling Dave about this. His article last week talking about how control can be played even if you're not playing the control deck and the decision trees and stuff. It was a great article. And what I was just saying about Dang's deck, illustrates what he was writing about to a T. And for a guy for 20 years later to get his first Pro Tour top 8,
Yeah.
and this is sort of funny because his profile mentioned he tied for a top 8, meaning he got 9th. And we were talking about how what if you start allowing people to write down ties for top 8s, what other weird statistics are you allowed to put down?
9 virtual top 16s.
Longest consecutive runs of 33rd place. That's the Riley Curran special.
That's right.
And I'm not trying to make fun of him because he's a better player than I am for sure. But it's nice to see him get this actual top 8 because I think people always mention players like Jerry Thompson was one when he top 8'd Gatecrash. Where it's who are the best players who don't have a Pro Tour top 8? And I would definitely say Adrian Sullivan was one of them. So it's good to see him get that monkey off his back.
Yeah, I was just I was super happy for him. Like I said, he just loves Magic. I mean, he's been around forever. He was writing articles when I first started playing. After Tempest came out. And I remember reading his articles back in the day. Yeah, from the dojo. Yeah, and he's been a pretty influential deck builder over the years. He did commentary for Star City for a while as well. So. Congrats to him, and he got a lot of support from people too. He had a lot of fans on Twitter, saying that they were really rooting for him. But yeah, card placement aside,
I mean, I can't get angry at a man that plays his cards upside down. I put lane. I'm lanes in front, so that angers way more people. I think
You're a bad person.
I know. I'm sorry.
And Adrian Sullivan, I'm sorry. You can play whatever you want. But on camera, it's cancer. It really is. I'm sorry. it's like he knows after playing for so long that like Magic coverage is like, okay, we want people to randomly turn this on and know what's going on, and when they turn it on and it looks like one guy controls all of the permanents, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
You know, though, that's kind of always been his way, though. Like, they talked about this a little bit on the coverage. You know, he likes to do things his own way, and, you know, that's cool, man. Like, more power to you.
Do thing.
Yeah.
I did want to bring up Shota Yasuoka's deck, only for the sheer fact that he has 2 Stratus Dancers in his sideboard, and that means my sleeper top 8 of the Pro Tour. That's
Might as
all
well.
that matters to
Might
me.
as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
Shut up, Mike.
Yeah, we don't even want to.
You're right. The
Yeah,
card that I had number 2 on my list was
Yeah.
your sleeper. Yeah, that makes
Turns
sense.
out Dragon Lord Attacker was really good.
Yeah, he was a sleeping dragon.
He
now.
was not. He was never asleep.
I wasn't sleeping on him. I was riding the dragon.
He was never asleep.
Yeah, I think if you look at these blue-black things, one thing that's fairly interesting to see, like Yasuoka, just forgoes Ojutai altogether and plays a ton of Icefall regions, which is really interesting. And it was great to see how he could set up the game. You saw him against a couple of Abzan opponents do this, where he could just be like, they spend the turn playing like a Siege Rhino, and then he just windmill slamming Icefall regions. More than likely the next turn, it's going to eat a removal spell. But they have to tap out to do it. They have to pay 5 mana to Hero's Downfall it, and their guy does not get to untap that turn. So, he's like, I get 2 draw steps out of this, plus, we go 1 for 1 on this card. And, it makes his Wrath spells better then, too, because then, afterwards, they've got to continue committing to the board. It was really impressive to see this card just do well for something. I think a lot of us, myself included, we mentioned this card, it's okay, but being an X3 is a bit of a liability. But man, in these control decks, making even your Lightning Strike cost 4 mana for a red deck, that's a whole turn. It is just a time walk. So it's impressive.
Yeah, Yasuoka's another guy that's kind of been around forever, and he loves playing control decks. There are a couple guys on Pro Tour that are always going to play control. He's definitely one of them, along with Guillaume Wafotapa. He's always playing control.
Yep.
But yeah, Yasuoka is a notable control player.
Also interesting to note that he played 2 Opulent Palace in his list as well, just for another blue-black duel. So he was all in on give me as many blue-black duels as I could possibly have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw that in Adrian Sullivan's list as well.
Right.
But
That's not something I've seen very commonly up until now, and I wonder if that's also to make room for a number of them playing a 1 or 2. We mentioned Haven of the Spirit Dragon. Maybe that's to make up for missing your colored source there. Though a lot of he's not playing Radiant Fountain. Was it Sullivan? Sullivan was still playing some number of Radiant Fountains.
yeah, he was.
So it's just interesting to see how the mana bases are even built.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing about Yasuoka, that's interesting too, is he doesn't have a team. He just kind of does his own thing, and he shows up. He still comes up with these innovative.
So
decks.
Sean McLean's it.
Sean McLaren.
Yeah, Sean McLaren.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we saw him a couple years ago at the Players Championship playing the blue-green Eternal Command deck.
Yeah.
in Modern with the Aether Vials and Eternal Witnesses.
That deck was
Pretty
sweet.
Yeah, so good for him, and he's somebody who's kind of he's in Hall of Fame discussion. He's in the discussion.
Top 8s are what we're keeping him back at this point.
Yeah, exactly. This was his second top 8, so who
He
knows?
probably
Maybe
still needs to get
that's-
another one, probably, but he's got a ton of pro points. He's just got a ton of pro points.
Yeah. They were talking about a lot about how how many. While he may not be top inning, is a lot of top 16s, top 32s.
Right.
That stuff adds up. I mean, it's not as glamorous as 6 top 8s or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's always there. So.
Now there is a version of Red Green Dragons that is in the top 8. Obviously, it was Jason Chung's list. It is different, vastly different, I would say, from CVM's list. This is the smaller version that we might have seen week 1 of dragons being in the mix. So we have things like Heir of the Wilds and Radiclaw Mystic showing up in here instead of Corsair Crewfix and Sylvan Caryatid, yeah, and also having the full set of Goblin Rabble Masters, as well as Sirach, the Hunt Caller. So this is more of what smaller green red aggro is probably going to look like in the future. I mean, congrats on him, piloting this list to top 8. I would still say that if I was going to play a green red list, I would still probably either want to go with Devotion or the bigger Dragons list.
Yeah, I do agree. I like the CVM style a little bit better. I will say though, this list may be a little better going forward, just because it seemed like since this one is a little bit more aggressive, maybe better against the blue-black deck.
That's true. Also, like having things like Boon Satyr and being able to deploy a threat at instant speed after a Wrath or something like that, or to kill them out of nowhere, is fairly nice. And even it being 4 power is pretty important, because you can do things like attack through Ojutai if you need to.
Or Silumgar. Like
Yeah,
Silumgar, the Drifting Death, which is a lot of times just a brick wall.
With the Bestow, it is also important to know that with Crux of Fate becoming the wrath spell of choice, you don't have any of those awkward like getting End Hostilities out, because End Hostilities has that rider that destroys anything attached to the creatures as well, and that's really there was a couple blue-white lists, but overall like when you have Crux of Fate, like the bestowing Boonsetter is actually a pretty solid play, because even when they tap out to Crux, you still get a 4/2. So Boonsetter's pretty good. He did pretty well in a couple instances this weekend.
Yeah, right.
Like the last hurrah for the big bestow man.
Yeah, and I mean, we have traditional sort of Abzan control showing up. Turns out that deck is
still good.
Still good. Still
Sea
probably
Rhino's
pretty
still a
decent.
good card.
Yep.
That was Marco Camiluzzi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he. I know, and Andrea Mangucci also played this. They played the exact 75. They were kind of like the Italian team.
Stallions.
Yeah, sure. Sure, we'll go with that. But yeah, Abzan Control is still around. I know Mangucci also did pretty well. I think he top 16. So, that's still a deck. I know the Pantheon played this. I know for sure Owen Turnwall played it because he was on camera. We didn't really see a whole lot of other. I think Huey had one limited match.
Yeah.
Didn't see Reed Duke
I don't
at all.
think we saw Reed Duke.
Reed Duke was on Soulflare.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, speaking of that deck, I'm gonna break into this right now. I know that we wanted to, talk about. I guess the top 16. The top 16 was also
I
insane.
think we can split the top 16 name wise was insane.
Yeah,
You had
exactly.
Brad Nelson, you had Craig Wesco, you had PV, who honestly I thought he was going to top 8. He was on a tear. I thought he was going to get another top 8. I was just like, geez, like give that guy an Esper deck. You know what I mean? Like, there's the whole like teach a man to play Esper, like, and he'll play Esper for a tournament. Give a man a good Esper deck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to convert this one. I'm sorry, it didn't work as well as I hoped.
Joshua DeLayton, Craig Wesco, Sam Black, like this. Me and Dave were talking about it. It's like, yeah, the top 8's good. And, congrats to Agent Sullivan, stuff like that. But it's like, can we actually just have the top 8 be the top 16 playing?
Yeah. Yeah, so we also had Kyle Bogamus finish 9th on Breakers.
On
At,
like point
barely,
zero, yeah, it was .08. Like, ugh.
Yeah, and he's a Michigan guy, so he's a Midwestern player. And then Seth Manfield, who the guy has just been. He had 2 win-ins, I believe, 2 at the end. I believe he lost his last 2 rounds to miss.
And he was
he was right there.
Wasn't he? He was playing the Abzan Splash Atarka.
The Abzan deck. Like,
Abzan Control, with Atarka.
I can't say that I didn't. I might want to play that deck.
That was pretty sweet. It was pretty sweet.
Siege Rhinos and Atarka? Nah, why would you want to do that?
It just sounds great. I don't know. It's best of both worlds. Peanut butter and chocolate.
Chocolate and mild
So
peanut butter.
are we going to go through these decks, or I think we should definitely talk about Craig Wesco's deck.
Yeah, I think we should talk about like sort of the interesting lists that kind of come out. The Soulflare Comranticore, the Bant mid range.
Oh, I agree. Let's look at some lists. I do want to. Maybe I'll be boring here, but the first 9 in one list is Brad Nelson. Should point out that if the guy had just drafted a little bit better, he would have been in this top 8. 9 and 1 was insane. Playing Abzan aggro. However, there's one real minor change. I think it's a big deal. One, no thought seizes in the main. They're on the board. But 2, playing Sirach. And I want to say, like, I haven't got to see this deck in action. I haven't really played it. But just looking at this deck and then seeing Sirach in it, adds, I think, just a totally different angle. It's a card that feels so much more aggressive than like Wingmate Rock. You're the chance to like be like Sirach into like Siege Rhino or Siege Rhino into Sirach even, and just like all of a sudden attack, because that's the thing that deck can't do. Like once you clear the board, like you have time, and Sirach sort of changes that whole feel.
Can confirm Soraka is insane in this deck. So at states, that was like the one change I was able to make from FNM is like cut a Wingmate Rock because I was playing 3 main and played 1 Soraka in the main. And every time I drew it, it was like unbelievable. I was like, oh my god, I need
Wish
to
I
be
had
playing more
more.
Soraks. Yeah.
Yeah, and playing in states against these green white X decks, Dromica's command was always a
It's
beating.
good. It's very good.
Always a beating.
It's
Like
very good.
it always felt so gross when they cast it because you were just losing. Like there was nothing worse than just being like, yeah, fight your guy, sacrifice an enchantment. It's just like, oh, you just 2-for-1 me. Goodbye, Corsair. Goodbye, other creature. You go in the graveyard now. I'm gonna go cry. Do you mind?
And then you probably ate an attack as well.
Oh yeah.
So, like-
oh yeah, all the time.
So-
It was like, oh yeah, hit you with my Anafenza for 4. Oh okay, cool, thanks.
So like, yeah, I don't
Blech.
know. I don't know. That's so gross.
Yeah, it is gross. And it like so that card makes me want to play a deck like this. Like that card, I just want to say green white X, whether it is, Abzan Aggro, whether it could be Craig Wesco's deck. But that card feels so powerful when you're getting that 2-for-1, and it seems like at least if CVM's Green Red Dragons list is going to be going on, getting a 2-for-1 does not seem that hard at all.
No, not when they have like mystics and stuff running around.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to mention that the other 9-1 list is an Abzan control bid range list. The guy's name is Chester Swords. That is an awesome last name. Congratulations, sir. And then we have Josh Layton, one of our top 16ers. He was also this was the Channel Fireball deck.
Yes.
Like this is the list that a lot of them played, or at least close to it, maybe a few cards off, what have you. So honestly, would you suggest like going to this list if you want to have a place to start?
I think overall, if you look at the top performing decks, and they kind of have links to these on the website.
Yeah.
This list shows up a lot. We see Josh Layton, we see Paul Cheon, we see Paulo Vitor Darmarosa. I believe there was one other one. They all finished, near top 16, and all had very good standard records with this. So even though none of them top 8'd, you see a lot of them did well in standard, and a lot of them are up in the near the top of the standings there. So this is where I would look, and basically if you haven't seen the list yet, it's basically the blue black splashing, and they're playing 3 Dragonlord Ojutais in the main deck.
Yeah, and typically they're pretty good at like producing articles of the decks they've played after the tournament. So
Yeah,
hopefully they'll have an Esper article,
Absolutely, yeah.
if not up already, up soon.
I will say the one thing that and I've sat here on this cast and badmouthed Blue Black for a while as far as where it was in after the cons after cons it was just not a very good control deck. It's gotten much better now, and if you watch any of those games, like there's definitely games where you can just like with a good removal or a good counterspell get like the deck can now make tempo plays like counter this thing, untap, slam Ojutai, and it's just like all of a sudden this control deck that has all the answers is also the aggressor.
Yeah. This one, like I said, it can pivot just like that. Like you play an Ojutai, all of a sudden they have to kill it, or you're just going to run away with the game.
And it's like and Dave, even playing against you, like sorry, I don't want to pound it in a little
That's
more,
fine.
but like Abzan Aggro is a good example of a deck that like takes a ton of damage from its mana base, and you were playing Thought Seizes and stuff, so it's like when we finally got to the point where like you were out of threats and I could just slam Ojutai, it's like you're not at 20. A lot of
Like 12.
it's like a lot of decks are just like, I can't. It's going to be hard for me to cast spells soon. And if you look at like these red-green decks that are running a ton of mana confluences, or even the heroic decks, if you can wipe them out, like they'll be sitting there going like, oh, I'm like 11. Oh no, I don't have much time.
By the way, speaking of heroic, did not do very well this weekend. I think I
especially-
saw one.
especially after the Tom Ross like bold call from Twitter.
He had a nice tweet.
He and Todd Anderson were apparently doing a little adult beverage consuming on Twitter the other night because they also got into like some like shouting matches with some people over their like the possible racism behind their like their picks for Pro Tour draft, which is like ridiculous. Even Kilbur was like,
Oh, yeah.
Kilbur was like, what do you guys like? What they're allowed to pick whoever they want to pick. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, but Tom Ross definitely said he was like it's sad to be sitting here watching these people do this, knowing you have the best deck that could be in the tournament. It was just like, wow, like that's really aggressive. And Heroic did not do well at all. So I don't know if that's true.
Well, it also wasn't Tom Ross playing.
True.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
it was an aggressive statement that didn't really follow
Pan out.
through.
Yeah. That is the awkward thing. I think that I would like to see like that deck's actual matchups compared to like what actually performed the Pro Tour. To see if there's like just a fundamental reason why. Like, do they just have a poor blue-black matchup? Or
Foul, tongue,
It's true.
invocation.
Yeah, having a
That's a good
sacrifice
card.
effect. Yeah.
That card, I played it over and over again. Every time it felt disgusting. And against Heroic that's trying to play protect the queen, right? They have to try and counter it. Because you could have 3 God's Willings in hand, and your creature still dies. And then you have a bunch of God's Willings with no creature. Like Foul Tongue Invocation, if you saw like the numbers, look at all these decks, look at the numbers of Foul Tongue Invocations, between 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 across all these different blue-black decks. How does the deck do that? Like, all right, I'm going to attack you with this thing, and on turn 3, it's like, okay, so you've put 4 spells into your guy, you're attacking, sack it, I gained 4, I've played 1 card. Try to win the game.
Yeah.
yeah, I think like even just taking like specific builds aside or specific card choices aside, I think Heroic in general is a deck that we have never really seen it do well at any Pro Tour that it's
true.
been legal in, just because pros are better at playing around all the little shenanigans that's going on. We've seen it consistently do pretty well on the SCG circuit, but against like the best competition in the world, it's not. It's really falling short.
You lose the free wins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like people are going to know what you're up to. They're going to know what to play around and all that. So it wasn't surprising to see it do bad. However, I do think I still think the Bant Heroic deck is going to be
Still good.
going forward. It's still going to be
You're
a
going
good
to
choice.
see it.
Yeah.
But, So do you want to talk about Wesco's deck real quick?
Yeah.
So Craig Wesco played Bant midrange.
Sure.
And we've seen this is a combination that we pegged as like something that's sort of a breakout from this tournament. You could say Atarka is the breakout card. You could say Ojutai is the breakout card. But the breakout interaction is Death Raptor and Den Protector. All over the place, a number of teams independently came to the same conclusion that Death Raptor is really good, and the card that makes it even better is Den Protector.
Mm-hmm.
And he's playing Ojutais, he's playing like Fleecewing Lions and Surox. And he has Master of the Unseens and Dromoka's Commands and Valorous Stances. So like he can even do, like you saw him play a couple of games where he could play Ojutai and like attack, and if they try to stoke it, he's just like, command it. You know what I mean? Like, pump it, do this.
You can do that. You could also Valorous
You can stance it for protection, so he could play Protect the Queen that way. But there was a control match where I was watching him on camera, and I didn't know what to think about this deck. I was like, this seems all right. He like played a Deathmist Raptor, and like the guy like killed the Deathmist Raptor, so like and he's like, you play Deathmist Raptor into Ojutai, and the guy like was like, okay, he might have been one of the few decks that had end hostilities. I'm trying to remember because he wiped the board, and it's like the guy like so he's like wiped the board, pass turn, and like Wesco's like untap, play my 6th land, play this more, flip up Den Protector, get back Ojutai, trigger my Deathmist Raptor, and I was like, oh my god, it was one card, and he's got the same board state he just had.
Yeah, he had a camera match against Paulo.
Okay.
Paulo was playing the blue-black Dragons deck, and Wesco definitely beat 2 Ugins. Like Ugin came down, wiped everything out. He was able to play a Sirach or something and like attack, kill it, and then like Paulo got Ugin back with the Haven of the Spirit Dragon, played it again. Wesco beat that one, and he ended up winning the game. It was like unbelievable. Like you would think like this deck would just roll over to Ugin. It's just like, oh yeah, it can't possibly beat Ugin.
Yeah, I mean, just having like Deathmist Raptor is like just being able to bring it back and like just bring something else back with it. It's just insane. How many is he running in his list? Is it full 4?
Full 4.
4 Deathmist Raptor and 4 Den Protector.
Protector.
And like, look at the interaction with Mastery. Like, you're playing mid-range matches, right? If you ever get the moment where like you've got a couple of creatures in play, then you play the Den Protector, you flip it up, you're like, trigger, get deck at least one, if not more, than that Deathmist Raptors, right? And you can stack these triggers, right? And then you're like, oh, so I'm going to get another card back from a graveyard. I'm going to put these creature, maybe more than this creature, back into play. I'm also going to gain some number of life from my Master of the Unseen. And this is me playing one card.
Yeah.
It's like my boards today already felt pretty good, and then Den Protector is like the key, where it's like, how do I tie these? Oh, and a bunch of people came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And it was pretty powerful.
So, like, when you kind of take a look at, we already talked about, Atarka kind of showing up, but I mean, like, you have, Willie Idol's deck, which is...
Sidisi Whip deck.
Sure, so Sidisi Whip with Den Protector and Atarka. No big deal.
And Deathmas Raptor.
And Deathmas Raptor. Yeah, Dave, you have it pulled up.
Yeah, I have it pulled up here. So he didn't do as well as Wesco. I forget where he finished, but his list is pretty cool. It's just your standard Sidisi Whip deck with 1 Dragon Lord Attacker main, and then he runs 3 Den Protector, 2 Deathmist Raptor. So, I mean that gives that deck. The deck is already pretty good. I mean it's obviously really good at grinding people out, but that just gives you more tools. And honestly, I played this deck a long time ago. It kind of wasn't really the same list as what we see now. But the problem that I had playing the deck was closing games out, and I think this can provide like a recurable threat that can actually end the game.
Yeah.
Right. I think you and I both have played Eternal Witness enough, Dave, to know that when you have regrowth tacked onto a card, it's pretty good. And Den Protector has evasion. Like,
Yes.
it's more mana, but it actively can be hard
Can
for...
attack past the course.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to block. So...
Yeah,
Man.
I definitely played against a similar list to Wesco's list and forgot the Rider Clause on Den Protector and tried to block it, and he's like, no, you can't block like that. I was like, oh, yeah.
I was like, sorry, she's mama. She's coming through. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Another deck I wanted to talk about that was sort of interesting, and I think Jerry T has mentioned this kind of deck multiple times. He ran a similar deck in a Pro Tour when he was still able to.
Yeah.
By the way, he's unlocked now. He's allowed to play in Pro Tours.
Yeah.
This is Levi Basham, he's the 7-3 at this point lists, playing black-red control, dragon control. So he's got 4 Regents, 4 Thunderbreak Regents, 4 Stormbreath Dragons, 2 Kolagons, the Storm's Fury, which is interesting because they're not Dragon Lords. He wants like the dash guys, and he's playing Kolaghan's Command, Foul Tongue Invocation, Draconic Roars, Hero's Downfalls, a bunch of Read the Bones. Like, it was an interesting sort of take on this, where like your creatures either all have haste or are hard to kill, and you're just playing a ton of removal. And it was interesting to see this list come back. Also playing 2 Haven of the Spirit Dragon because that card's super real.
That card is so good.
Sorry, Crucible, you tried. You failed miserably.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, we kind of found out pretty quickly that card
Yeah,
was
that card
really
was
good when we were
very
playing the red kind of devotion,
Yeah.
big red deck that
Big
we
red
played at the
deck, yeah.
Invitational, and like even like initial testing, I was like, I think I had two Nykthos and 2 Haven of the Spirit Dragons. I was like, Nykthos has been all right, but Haven of the Spirit Dragon has been unbelievable.
Yeah, it was sweet.
And I was explaining to Morgan, I was just like, when I'm playing Abzan aggro, it's like I feel like I can't ever beat green red because I have I was playing 4 Heroes Downfall in 1 ultimate price in my main deck, so I had 5 ways to kill a Stormbreath Dragon that resolved. But your deck's running 4 Stormbreath Dragon and 2 or 3 Havens.
Oh, yeah.
So you just have a lot more Stormbreath Dragons than I have answers. But yeah, that card is. I think it was a. This is one of those cards you definitely have to play with to really understand how powerful it is.
It's also interesting to see that he was playing. So he's playing 2 Havens here, and then 4 Thoughtseize, but then 2 Kolaghan's Command. And like Kolaghan's Command in this deck essentially work as another Haven. Like, oh, you killed the Stormbreath Dragon, cool. I've Thoughtseized you. Now discard a card. I'm getting a Stormbreath Dragon back. And you're just like, oh god, I can't keep killing these things, right? Like eventually, like it's interesting to see a deck like this. It's sort of playing on the other axis of card advantage, where instead of like trying to always have more resources than your opponent, you're trying to make sure that your opponent runs out of resources for your creatures. Like, I'm going to continue to try and stick the same threat over and over again. Stop me.
I wonder if this can be morphed into more of like a Jund style.
Oh, don't
Like-
tell Jordan that.
Yeah.
Don't give that boy hope.
Maybe like add some courses and Caryatids here. Maybe we can make this happen.
Oh, jeez. All right, one more deck I want to talk about, and then we can move off of decks to the Pro Tour.
Okay.
Is Pat Cox. Now, Pat Cox is down in like the 6-2-2 bracket, which is a pretty good Pro Tour standard record. He's also playing the Deathmist Raptor and Den Protector deck. He's also playing Hidden Dragon Slayer. He has a green-white aggro deck playing a Johnny Steadfast and 3 Citadel Siege. This is also an Avatar the Resolute deck. This thing's pretty spicy.
Yeah.
There was a thing going around how a couple people on through Channel Fireball, they had a video about it. They were trying to work on it, but essentially the question was, if you have a hands-down best card in Limited, like you had Pack Rat, right? When do you eventually try to make it work at Standard? Because if it is hands-down the best card that can be, that you can open here, then maybe, and Pat Cox tried to do it. Like, if you open a Citadel Siege in Limited, you are golden. And this was a spicy list, and he did well with it.
Yeah, this is honestly looking at this list. It's actually very similar to Wesco's list.
Minus the Oddities.
Yeah, he leaves out the blue. He's playing like Wingmate Rocks instead, and he's playing like Citadel Siege over the Mastery of the Unseen's main. But yeah, this is a pretty interesting take.
4 Hidden Dragon Slayers across the 75.
Those are going to be pretty good, I think, moving forward.
I mean, there were
A lot of dragons to slay,
to
turns
kill.
out.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He slays them dragons.
Like, so think about this though. We said how Den Protector, like you get to flip up, get a card back, and target, and trigger your Deathmist Raptor. Well, how about flipping the 3/2 lifelinker up, killing their blocker, getting back Deathmist Raptor? Like, yeah, it's like flicking up Den Protector and getting back a removal spell. Like, seems pretty similar, you know what I mean, in that scenario. Obviously easier to block, but the lifelink's not irrelevant either. Like, if you're playing against mono red, you can just go turn 2 Hidden Dragon Slayer, because a 2/1 lifelink creature against the red deck can actually be a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I don't know. This deck seemed interesting. I would not be surprised. I don't know. I think Citadel Siege may have been too deep. Interesting to see, though. I think Master of the Unseen is still probably just better.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I definitely think that.
So, we just want to highlight some of the decks here, like
Yeah.
just some of the interesting things. They gave us a ton of lists, so by all means, take the time to
Yeah.
look through them.
I mean, there are too many lists that you could possibly look at between Pro Tour as well as states lists. So don't get lost. But they're out there.
We don't have to get into this one too much, but just go look up Sam Black's list.
Yeah, bees,
Red Green Bees, Scuttling Doom Engine.
Yeah.
Now Caleb Durward has been known for playing bees. He played it at the 50K for TCG
He's
Player.
been working on these decks for a
Yes,
while.
he has an article on Red Green Bees as well because he won a PPTQ with it. So definitely an interesting take on the Red Green archetype. But yeah, fun
Can't
stuff.
be controlled most.
Yeah, I
of the
was
time,
gonna say
though.
it might
Not
not
at
be
all.
the best position deck now, but it's pretty sweet.
If it's all creatures, though, if it's all creatures in the format,
Yeah.
Bees is pretty sweet.
Would you could play main deck Hornet Nest and Cetizen Tactics?
Yeah,
That's sweet.
Also roasts.
Yeah.
Which we got to see multiple times. Like roast, target my hornet, my hornet nest. Angry bees.
I almost got to make that play, and it was going to be sweet, but I didn't need to. I won that game, but I had that line available to me.
You
it was a
you
great.
should have. I was watching that game.
I should have, like, there was a turn where it's like I just should have done that, but
Just for fun?
just didn't. Oh well.
I'm gonna take this club, smack around this hornet nest. See what kind of bees come out. See how angry they are.
No, Dave had the best analogy. You just have like it on like a pit, and then you just like
yeah, you just put it on a spit. And just like
yeah. You're just
turning it around.
Oh no, the bees!
only 5 though.
Yeah, so you knock it off the spit after that.
I mean, they can take out Natarka. They're angry, man.
They're angry. So next we will actually go into the question of the week. We haven't had one of these in a while, but Mike wanted to actually have one, so I'll hand it over to him and he
right.
can introduce it.
Yeah, I was kind of excited about this. I after watching a fair amount of coverage this weekend, I sort of want to throw this out here, and I want to give you some talking points so we can feel about this. But I'm going to, I guess, subvert the question of the week here a little bit. I'm going to propose an argument for this, and we can break it down. Okay? I propose that this is one of the best Pro Tours coverage-wise that they have ever done. Now, there's a black hole. We talked about it. All right? There's Chapin. Okay? So I'm throwing it out there. This is one of the best coverages they've ever done for a Pro Tour. Okay? That is including things like Randy being in the booth the entire time. Okay? I am still throwing this out here. I'm going to give you guys some points. You can discuss this with me, okay? And Dave, I guess I'll ask you this, okay? Because Morgan, Dave's been around longer. Can you remember any Pro Tour, any coverage of any Pro Tour that actively was successful in marrying the set theme with the decks being played at the table?
Huh. Maybe something like Lorwyn. I don't really remember. That was a while ago at this point. But, I mean, Lorwyn was tribal based, so... But that was like a million fairies decks, I guess. So
I mean, because I think if you take it that way, you could probably argue Mirrodin as well. But I don't know if I would call that successful because it was one really good deck. Like, you had what, fairies and like Kithkin, maybe? Like, we're okay.
yeah, Merfolk a little bit.
Can you remember one? I mean, think about the themes that we've had. You know, we had Angels with Avacyn. People hated the format, right? So it didn't do very much. Ravnica, you played up the guilds, right? However, thematically, the guilds didn't do much more beyond provide color. It wasn't like, you know, people were playing the Dimir deck that did this, you know what I mean? Or the Boros deck was a burn deck. That wasn't a battalion deck. So, like, that did not work.
Yeah.
Theros did play up Devotion fairly well, so I'll give it that credit. But it still didn't feel like there wasn't this positivity here. I would argue that Dragons of Tarkir so successfully put dragons into the format that are playable that it actually created a perfect marriage. When I saw the little commercial going back to coverage of like Sarkin and talking to dragons on the plane, and then they're like, all right, we're playing Esper Dragons, the Dragonlord Ojutai. It's like, you've just said the word dragon 6 times. It didn't feel wrong to say the word dragon 6 times, and your set is named Dragons.
Yeah.
How is that not successful?
Yeah, now I would say that Khans was sort of the lead up to this, right?
True.
Because you had, you know, Jeskai, Abzan, like you had those names being represented in these actual decks, and you had, you know, those powerful cards from those Khans still coming through. So that also was something that it was very powerful to see that marriage of you know, set concept as well as the decks being played. But I definitely agree with you. Like seeing like all the dragons, all the impactful cards from you know, Dragons of Tarkir being played, and it kind of like having that excitement about the set come through with what was actually being shown. It was pretty powerful and like really impactful for someone who's new to the game and watching this. I think that like it would make you want to play because like I want to play with all these big dragons.
Ding! I think that's actually it. Go ahead, Dave.
I was gonna say, I mean, not only the dragons, but just the Dragons Matter cards. We saw a ton of Draconic Roars, saw Silumgar Scorn.
Counterspell.
Counterspell. we saw Foul Tongue Invocation. All these cards saw play, and they were good. They're really good.
Very good, right? Like, oh man. So, in addition to this, I think one of the best things they have done for this, I think the Dragon Counter was insane. I think the Dragon Counter was beautiful.
Okay, so for those that didn't watch the coverage or didn't know, like after every round, they just had, you know, a graphic that would pop up like, how many dragons have we seen in the feature match? You know, like on camera. Basically.
Rachagon was definitely all about it.
Yeah, he was all about it.
Dragons.
It's all right.
Personally, I didn't really care. I thought it was a little silly, but for the casual watcher, for the casual viewer, I thought it was great.
Ding.
And if that gets more people to watch, if it gets more people excited to watch and play Magic, I think it's awesome. So
I think silly is the perfect word for it. I think it was silly, but I think you need that sometimes.
It didn't detract from the coverage at all. It was just kind of something extra that they threw in there, and it was kind of funny. They're like, "Oh man, are we going to get over 100? I don't know." Like, you know,
I'd like to see what anecdotes come out of like I wonder how many people who like watch this might have watched this with their kid. Who like if you're watching for coverage and then you can show your kid like, man, look at all the dragons, right? Like. That's so huge. Now, when I say successful, we could talk about how ambiguous that word is, right? Like, was it successful from like a pure commentary standpoint? Probably not perfect. Again, we had the black mark with the whole. We should not have seen the whole Chapin argument.
Yeah, that is the downfall. That is like, in all honesty, it's probably better that it happened on Friday, not on Sunday or something like that.
This is true.
So it happening early on in the tournament was, you know. It allowed people to move on from it, basically. But Man, that is a rough spot in coverage. It's a rough spot because like the commentators aren't helping anything either in that situation. Like they're trying to do their best, but like Randy's in there saying like, "Oh man, you know, he was around in like the early days of Magic where you could like basically trying to say that you could basically talk judges into anything that you wanted." And it's just like that is not helping people get into the game.
The interesting about that too is that Randy's retelling things because he was also a part of that group of people.
Oh yeah.
So it sort of seemed odd to me because I don't want to say coming off as judgmental, but it was a weird anecdote to point out when you yourself probably benefited from this more than once in your lifetime.
Yeah, but also, I mean, he was kind of comparing that situation, which I didn't feel like it was at all.
No, not
he was
at all.
comparing that to like back in the days when the Wild West and when everybody was cheating and it's like oh no,
Yeah.
we don't want to highlight that.
Yeah, that's not a good
We're trying to
time
move
for
on
Magic.
from
So
that.
that's a black mark, okay? Now remember, again, successful also means compared to the most recent ones. And honestly, I think we've sat here, I myself leading this charge, we've come back after Pro Tour has been overtly negative. I didn't feel that way this time. I will say, despite Randy, okay, and I'm sorry, Randy Bueller, if you ever come across this and you're bored and you listen to this, we're not going to say good things about you. I'm sorry. As a person, you might be awesome, I don't know, but as a commentator, you're not good, okay? But Ian Duke continues to be
Yeah.
great in the
Again,
booth.
yeah, he was insane.
And throughout the entire topic, you have when you have Marshall, you know what I mean? Like, he's good. He is good. He is professional. He may not be the most hard hitting, but when you have that idea of the person who is just reliable, who's got that voice, who like you can go back to, if you just had him and Ian Duke on those matches, like Ian is your person who's just he's going to break down everything and does so well. And I think they're starting to find a better balance there. I don't know if that means Randy would be out anytime soon, but I would not be surprised if they started pushing, you know what I mean, out.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Ian Duke's commentary just from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah,
Because he
very
can
much
break
so.
down the strategy or like, potential plays as well as, kind of the other side of it or like, oh, hey, like what were you thinking when you designed this card? Like he has a lot of insight that he can provide and he's very, he seems like a natural at it, like there was no curve with him.
The specific anecdote to support that. It was Adrian Sullivan's 14th or 15th round. And he was playing against who's he playing against? Was it
He's playing against Ifro.
was it Ifro?
Yeah, he beat Eric Froelich.
Okay, I'm trying to remember if that was the game it was. I don't think it was. I don't think it was. It was playing against Red Green. Maybe it was. Maybe it's the top eight I'm thinking of because it might have been the replay. But essentially, he was like it was a whole game that literally came down to him showing. Yeah, it was against Strasky because he had the Nisa. That was the match where he had the Nisa and the Xenagos in the same game. You know what I'm talking about?
He played against
Or was it
Thomas.
was it Hendricks?
Hendricks. Yeah.
Okay, my
Yeah.
apologies. That similar deck constructions, but essentially the entire game came down to Aether Spouts. Like, how much do you attack for here? How many turns extra can Sullivan get by not? And instead of them sitting there going, because in the past you'd have a board state where like a guy would have a bunch of creatures and an opponent at a fairly low life total, and if they didn't swing, like if he just swung with like 2 or 3 of them, you'd be like, well, I don't understand why he wouldn't have attacked there. I don't really know what he's playing around. And immediately Ian Duke is like this just shows you how important Aether Spouts in this is matchup because he has to decide what he's willing to lose here and what can he push forward to get. He needs Adrian Sullivan to play that card. To get he needs to force enough damage through to make him play the card without losing enough on his board. And he's not totally sure Adrian has it, but if he does, he can't get blown out here. And it's perfect. It's one turn, and it's such a difficult concept to see, especially if you're pulling in the casual people who are like, oh, I like dragons. What's going on here? And the difference between having Ian Duke sitting there going like, this all comes down to Aether Spouts, which this is the card we can pull up on the screen. Here it goes. To I don't know why he didn't attack there. It seems kind of stupid. He should have just attacked there, which is what it's been in the past.
Yeah.
It's such a huge difference for me.
Yeah, not having a tactical mindset, not having like a play-by-play person. And like when we had Cedric on, he was saying that he's more of the tactical person, he's more of the play-by-play person, and PSLA a lot of the time is color commentary. And like having that dynamic is important. Star City Games has realized this, and that's why they have people that can fill those roles.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they do it in sports broadcasting.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
have the one person who's just basically telling you what's happening, and then the other person who's providing, the
And you can't have
other
like
interesting info.
two of those people. You can't have like the two, play-by-play people. You can't have two of the color commentators because you're not going to get that full, rich coverage experience that you really want from any competitive event.
So, what I want to point out here is my thesis here, right? Is that this is one of the most successful ones in recent memory. I don't want anybody who's listening to this to think that I am saying that this is great. They're done. That's it. You found it, right? We can improve. Okay, you can improve the way that Cedric had said in our own cast, talking about, and I think he was even searching for some of the numbers. I saw him on Twitter looking for the Coca-Cola numbers, right? That can improve. We do have, we did get to see a team sponsored by Ultra Pro, which is a step in the right direction, despite Ultra Pro not being a brand outside of Magic. That's a step. But I want to say, like, I don't ever remember watching a Pro Tour, for any of the most recent sets and thinking like, the deck that I'm about to see be played is actively illustrating the theme that they are trying to sell in their set, and they can discuss it in a positive fashion. The players who are playing in the Pro Tour are excited for the decks they're playing. Like, you hear PV, was like super excited about this deck. Like, this is the best deck I've played in a long time. And he's playing Dragons. So if one of the celebrated names in the game is like telling you, like, I love this deck, I got to play Dragons, they're like, interesting. And where did you get those Dragons? Were they in Dragons of Tarkir? And it doesn't seem facetious to say it. I have to call that a success.
Yeah, I think, this is what they want the Pro Tour to be. And this was kind of the argument against having a modern Pro Tour. Because the last Pro Tour, were you really excited about Fate Reforged? Did we even see any Fate Reforged cards? I guess we saw Tasigur.
Tasigur.
But, like, that was it, right?
Bananas.
This one, you had just whole new decks being spawned, or I guess new versions of Blue-Black.
Yeah.
Just take over. But
and that in of itself is an interesting thing, because we're only one set away from now from the largest standard's going to be in a very long time. Like, once new rotation kicks in, you won't see a standard this big. Like, you'll have two large sets, which will be a little bit different, but you're not going to have the full block with the two core sets that don't exist anymore. So it's interesting to see how this is going to start tinkering towards that. It's fun to see the way the deck building goes.
Yeah, but if this is any indication of what to expect from all these standard Pro Tours that we're going to be seeing, outside of the one modern one per year, then I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. And
it's just we talked about how and if you go read like Ches Andres, like his articles, talking about how like the growth explosion has slowed down. Okay, there was a huge growth explosion from the game from Zendikar on through Innistrad. It was a huge growth model. And we've had some clunker sets since then. You've had some things like Dragon's Maze, which was garbage, or Avacyn Restored, even with Innistrad block, which was like a popular block, and then like Avacyn or like Innistrad and Dark Ascension were like people love drafting, and then Avacyn comes in and just like, oh.
In all honesty, I think Return to Ravnica was probably still pretty big. People got pretty hyped.
They ended that block with like, ooh.
And then you roll into Theros, which I don't think was a particularly powerful.
It wasn't a powerful block, and I don't think it resonated the way that Wizards hoped it would with the flavor. It did not feel like Innistrad felt.
Yeah, well, I thought the flavor was there, but just the mechanics were just garbage.
Maybe they didn't do as good of a job reflecting it, whatever it was.
Yeah, it felt like the power decrease. Like they kind of let some of the air out of the tires a little bit.
Which is fine. You got to do that every now and then, especially if you understand New World Order. But when you're talking about growth for the game, a game that's heading into a movie, and a game that's heading into a totally different cycle for Standard. This is if this is a send off party for the for the 3 set block, man, I tip my hat. It was well done.
Yeah,
I want to go purchase Dragons. I want to go and do this. I want to throw money at Dragons, and I am not a casual player. So you have done something successful.
It's
Your
true.
coverage is something successful. So I guess my whole point of this is that I can't hate on them for one Pro Tour. You did it. I will not badmouth you for a Pro Tour. Randy, yes, you. Okay, no more Uncle Randy. But other than that,
oh man, yeah, I have to say I was definitely entertained by coverage. It was definitely good, and I am sad that most of it was on when I was asleep, and I couldn't really watch a whole lot of it because I don't want to wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to watch Magic coverage. But I know that from what I did watch, it was fantastic. And I do hope that this is sort of the mark. This is where they start next time. Like, this is you did this. All right, start from here and go forward instead of like don't slide back. Don't backslide into like worse coverage or anything like that. Well, I believe that is everything for this week. So we definitely have some awesome Magic tournaments coming up this weekend. We have SCG Providence, which is standard, and then there's GP Krakow, which is also standard, and we'll have live Twitch coverage, and then GP Kyoto, which will be Legacy without any live coverage, unfortunately. So I think that would be pretty sweet, like a GP in Japan for Legacy. Like,
I mean, it's all Emrakul decks, right? Like, it has to be giant tentacle monsters.
I don't. It's not just all kaiju, all right, over there. It's not all that.
Does Grizzlebrand fall under the kaiju? Like, he has to, right?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Sure.
Look for Tomohiro Saito and that tournament.
Yeah.
He loves Legacy. So.
Yeah, and I assume they'll have text coverage updated pretty regularly. So I'm sure you'll read about some pretty interesting things that are going on there.
And if you're not going to anything, the bigger tournaments, it is game day this weekend.
Yeah, correct. So
and let me tell you, those promos are sweet.
They're very good. So you have Scaleguard Sentinels
Sentinels
as your uncommon promo, and then Thunderbreak Regent full art promos.
Oh man. I know Comic Town's running events, and just most of the local stores are running events.
Correct.
Plus the game day mat is Sarkin, which that mat looks insane as well.
Yeah, that's awesome art to have on that mat. So, and actually it says champion on it. There's no champions around
Champions.
or anything like that. Full blown champion.
Full blown champion.
You get your N. But yeah, again, Comic Town will have events.
You earn the end.
Yeah, we'll have events both Saturday and Sunday. You can find those events at ComicTownGamingCenter.net. No, that's not it. Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook.
There you go.
Excuse me. And then ComicTown.net is their website. And you can also find us online. We're at YourEndStep.com, or follow us on Twitter at YourEndStep. We also have, we're also on iTunes, so please subscribe to us there. Also, Podcast Republic, if you do have an Android device that you prefer to listen to us on, that is a great free way to subscribe to the podcast and still get our downloads pretty much as soon as they get uploaded.
And MTG Cast.
Yeah, MTG Cast.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. We try to be as many places as we humanly can. We also do get uploaded on the Comic Town YouTube page. So if you,
they have a number of they've dipped into the podcasting.
Comments
as well.
They have a new podcast. It's Comic Town Hall. So if you also like comics, we do encourage you to 100% listen to that podcast as well. So
they do a video series, black and white and red all over.
Yeah, correct.
And,
where they review weekly comic books.
And they got put on a pretty big website recently. I'm trying to remember what it was. For another comic outlet. So that channel is also growing. So you
check it out.
If you come up to me and go, hey, I would listen, but I don't know where to find the podcast, I'll probably just kick you in the shin.
Yeah,
like, you're just wrong.
I'll
give you a card and I'll give you information out, but I'm still probably gonna kick you in the shin.
I try so hard to make sure you guys are able to listen to it on anything, anywhere.
At anything, anywhere. A coconut on a deserted island at your end step.
You can do it. We have the technology. I mean, you probably got the professor there, right? So he can draft up something.
To be fair, I'd probably just spend all your time with Marianne, right? Like, that's what you're gonna do, right?
Fair enough. Oh man, where else can you go for magic? Magic information. Also, Gilligan's Island references. You're welcome, America. You're welcome. But that has been another lovely episode of At Your Instep, and we'll catch you guys another time. Bye.